So we're going live.
You're supposed to give us the countdown in 5, 4.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Tonight we are doing the fourth installment of Abundance Hope Center's Normalizing Violence panel series. Tonight we're talking about interpersonal violence. So before we get into our wonderful panel members who will be offering their analysis and their experiences this evening, I want to introduce Abundance of Hope Center. We are a family ran organization and homelessness prevention with holistic methods here in Seattle. We serve King County at-risk youth ages 12 to 26 and their families. So I'm personally very excited about the Denormalizing Violence panel because a lot of our programming is about the whole person. How can we change the way that people think and feel and process things so that they are then making different decisions and having different outcomes in their lives? So this is one of those places where I feel like we're able to have those deeper and sometimes harder and more difficult conversations. They're a little bit meatier, but they're so worth it. And they're honestly the critical conversations that we need to be having as a community. So I'm very excited to be here. I thank you all for your time and for your input. And with that, I will open up to the panel members to introduce themselves. Just go ahead, whoever wants to go first.
Okay, ladies first, right? Tylisha or Mary?
I don't mind going first.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
For sure. So my name is Tylisha Messiah. I'm here representing, I suppose, a past of dealing with interpersonal violence in my personal relationships, but also because I've founded an organization that gives women a safe space to be able to create. It's called Safe and Sound Studios. It's a women's art residency, and it's all about really just giving women a safe space to create. Yeah, like I said.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, my name is Mary Williams, and I'm currently working with several organizations. I'm a survivor, and I do have some experience also in the field working with other women. I'm a substance use disorders counselor. So as you know, there's often an intersection between substance use and violence and mental illness. So I've often worked with, other women who are experiencing violence and was able to share, my story. I'm currently working with the CSEC task force, which is, what's the first word? Anyway, it's a coalition against sexual exploitation of children. And so we really have come a long way as far as the laws and that protecting children from violence, especially sexual violence, but we still have a ways to go with women. So lots of work to still be done, and very honored to be asked to speak here today.
Thank you for being here, Mary. We're honored to have you. All right, fellas, I guess it's up to you, whoever wants to go next.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna let Mr. Curtis go last. My name is Dr. Conrad Trayvon. Well, Dr. Trayvon Conrad Webster. I'm here because I have an investment in Black male mental health. I founded a company called Black Boy Hill, where we provide free mental health service to African American identified boys in the K-12 school system. So really excited to be here and talk about interpersonal violence. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. All right, Curtis, rounding it out for us.
Yeah,
Oh.
I guess.
Yeah.
My turn. So my name is Curtis Calhoun. I'm a project manager with Africa Town Preservation and Development Association, as well as a certified transformational coach. So what I do is I help people prioritize their needs, wants, and desires, develop new ways of thinking, create new routines and habits to be able to effectively achieve or accomplish their dreams, goals, and determine ideas. So we focus on 5 essential result areas, which are mindset, beliefs, behaviors, performance and results. And we do that through identifying the 6 culprits of self-sabotage, which are self-doubt, negative thoughts, limiting beliefs, hindering behaviors, unfounded fear, and toxic relationships. So the whole goal is to be able to introduce a person to their real self, because a lot of time we're living in this world as kind of this illusion or this image we put out there. So we want to introduce you to your real self, and then from your real self to your best self, and then to your ideal self. So that's the whole goal of the program. And a survivor of violence in the family, but then also a reformed abuser, where that carried over into my life, and I found myself using those tactics and things like that in my relationships, and definitely found ways to come up out of that. And I'm happy to be here to share those. And like I said, like Mary said, honored to be here like everybody else.
Awesome. I'm loving the different perspectives, the different backgrounds that everyone are bringing to this conversation. And I'm really excited to just jump right into it, really. So let's get to the first question. What is your definition of interpersonal violence? And I know that, as I already said, interpersonal violence covers a lot of things, and it's intentionally left broad to leave space to honor everyone's lived experience and analysis. So again, whoever wants to jump in and handle that first.
I can go first. We can keep it in the order that we went. So interpersonal violence occurs on differing levels. Sometimes somebody might feel small comparatively to others they perceive or like them in their surrounding environment, and they take the conception out on those they'd consider vulnerable to accepting that they are weaker than them. Sometimes a person feels neglected or wronged by someone and may lash out before they communicate. People of these situations could occur as a male or a female being an aggressor, and in private or public, depending on relationships that trigger feelings stemming from behaviors learned in the fundamental basis of one's upbringing or foundational learning environment.
Okay, and then I'll just add on to what Tylisha said. So yeah, my understanding of violence is any interaction that is jarring, harmful, detrimental to another party. And so again, in a very broad sense, there's all kinds of interpersonal violence that goes on. Well, especially for the Black community, when it comes to just daily microaggressions and daily things that we're faced with. I heard a term recently, which I had never heard before, and it was called weathering. And they talked about, it was basically in response to healthcare and that, and they were talking about how, you know, statistically, people have thought that Black people felt less pain and all these other misconceptions that we deal with the healthcare system. But in all those systems, we experience that weathering. And the weathering idea is basically like when there's a storm, like we just saw down in Louisiana, right? You know, the buildings go through some weathering where, you know, the rain doesn't hit it, the sun doesn't hit it, you know, and maybe one side of the house, the paint is a different color because of that weathering. And so to me, that's also interpersonal violence, just those small things that, well, it's not small to us, but the things that maybe others don't notice, those microaggressions and things, those forms of weathering on us as Black and brown peoples, that's also interpersonal violence. But yeah, in a traditional sense, you know, violence, we always think of, you know, something that's jarring physically or emotionally that actually, you know, is visible harm to someone. That's violence.
I'm trying to see how I can go behind these ladies who already explained it all. I would like to say, just to piggyback off Ms. Williams, yes, it is a way of inflicting harm to self and to others. Comes in 3 forms. It could be intimate, it could be family, and it could be community. In education, we like to say it's racial battle fatigue. when racism is hitting you from every different angle and people of color have to deflect these type of stereotypes, these type of conversations about race, being the only Black person in the building who has to handle all people of color issues. This could be also seen in K through 12. We can look at media influences, bullying, cyberbullying. And then for self, you can see this through suicide or gang membership. If we're looking at it in community or gun violence, and it's been hyper surveillanced in our K through 12 school system when our Black boys are being monitored in the hallways. You can see this through the school to prison pipeline. So yeah, that's just a few examples, but I'm sure we're gonna get into more. But yeah, that's what I see as interpersonal violence.
Yes, we will absolutely be getting more into those examples, a little bit more into the conversation. Curtis, did you want to say something about the definition for your?
Yeah, because for me, the definition in the beginning was very basic. I'm a definition guy. So when you talked about violence, it made me want to look up the word and really get an understanding, because I really want to be able to express clearly the thoughts, so you want to be able to know what the word really means instead of what we've taken it to mean for all these years. So for me, it was just, physical harm or physical, intentional physical harm to somebody. But when I looked it up in Webster's dictionary, it was the physical use of force to injure, abuse, damage, or destroy. Now, the World Health Organization has intentional use of that way, right? So, but intentional, all of it, you think it has to do with mindset to be intentional. So anytime you use that, it's intentional. There's no point where you're doing acting physically violent without being intentional and knowing what you're doing or intending to harm the other person. That's what it's all about in the first place. But the American Psychological Association had an extreme form of aggression, such as assault, rape, or murder. But one of the things that I learned by doing the research was there are different types of violence. Now, I knew there was different types of abuse, but I didn't know there was different types of violence. So what the types of violence are verbal, physical, emotional, psychological, financial, and then there's forms of neglect that are considered violence as well. So by being on the panel, it helped me to broaden my understanding and perspective of what violence is. So I have a greater definition of that now.
Ashe.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of the time, having vocabulary that supports, our experiences and just naming something that's happened to us and validating that, it helps so much with the healing that, needs to be done on the individual level as well as the community. So let's definitely hop into that. And I love that we talk about, what violence means to each of us. And then we talk about the actual definition of it, which really was encompassing for what everyone had said in their experiences. So that really just came to me just now as well. So let's move on to the second conversation question, which is where we are really getting into some of those examples that you were already talking about, Dr. Trayvon, where we're talking about these examples of interpersonal violence, right? So the second question is, where have you observed this interpersonal violence in, your personal life or in your professional life? Because, work cultures can be violent as well. And like Tylisha was saying, the violence can happen in your home or outside, so.
So there's a family history of violence in the lives of my grandparents. The model of behavior was adopted by their children, which they passed down to most of their kin too. Unfortunately, as a child, I witnessed domestic violence, like young parents fighting each other and arguing about childhood traumas, other family members in the house fighting each other, visiting family members like victim of pimping. Culture of family hardening. There's definitely that going on, like a whole generational culture of like hardness to the heart, right? Forming resilience against each other to survive. These are generational curses. Violence was perpetuated intergenerationally. attraction of domestically violent relationships grew on me. It wasn't until I had faced fierce consequences that I had recognized a thought pattern of seeing violence as love. Prior to this, things would regularly transgress into physical altercations, something my parents and grandparents didn't have a chance to do at my age was recognize patterns of behavior, heal, and wait to have children. I'm learning to trust my decisions so that I can love again, love myself, love the men in my family. I've often have found myself in the past reacting harshly, acting wildly, hardening towards all men. I'm now working with youth, and everyone's story is unique, but there is a reason why I have a heart for this type of work in social services. I can relate to feeling unsafe at home, running away, and the use of marijuana or relationships to fill a void. I wanted to feel better, actually better. Hopefully, I can show the youth that they want to feel better too.
Thank you for that. Mary, did you want to add anything?
Can you just repeat the question one more time?
So we're talking about how, we've witnessed interpersonal violence being perpetuated in our personal or professional life. In this case, we're talking about, families. How do families normalize violence against each other? This hardening against each other, I've definitely experienced that in my own family, and we've had to do some active healing against that. Is there any example that you could think of that just as an observation in your personal or professional life of
Yeah, pretty much everything Talisha said, just seeing family members who even, people who are sort of disowned out the family, or sometimes I even consider it violence when, we know something's going on and then family just ignore it. It's like, oh, we know so-and-so, he's on the streets or whatever. And we just, well, he's out, we just don't deal with him, or, that type of thing. And sometimes even not having consequences, like, it's not the most loving way to just let somebody, run amok and not never kind of reel them in and explain to them, you might have some consequences on down the road here. We're your family. We love you. But I do also just want to emphasize what you said. Actually, there's a lot of violence I've experienced in the workplace. And I wish that as a young person, people could have prepared me for that a little bit more. Some of the competition that goes on, especially amongst, just people jockeying for professional position. And that can be pretty valid. Just having that hostile work environment. I just wanted to add that, but I think she covered everything.
Man, I keep telling y'all, it's hard to go after these. But I experienced interpersonal violence through verbal abuse, watching this from my parents and watching this through other family members. In return, I romanticized this verbal abuse and brought it into my relationships. I thought this was a way in order for me to be a man, which created toxic masculinity. We hear it often, boys are going to be boys. This is why we behave a certain way, or when we inflict violence amongst each other, it's just a way of us being tough. So with this romanticized, I brought some of those things into my relationship, not on the physical side, but more of the verbal abuse, which caused a lot of issues and failed relationships, didn't know what was going on, until finally, when I had to sit with this myself, I tried to commit suicide, and I inflict that behavior on myself, and try to take all the pain that I was experiencing and not creating healing moments for myself. And then, which transpired more into me being more active in the community of trying to seek an identity that I never had. And this identity came into gang violence. And with gang violence comes more interpersonal community violence that I was inflicting on others. Now that I'm more of aware of my social surroundings and social behaviors that I'm putting out, I'm able to gather myself and get that collective healing from my community with my counselors, and also creating a health plan, self-help care health plan for myself in order for me to disrupt and dismantle those type of behaviors. Now, on a professional side, I have experienced a lot of racial battle fatigue. Being the only second, it's only 2 African-American males in Seattle public schools in our district office. It's hard sometimes and challenging to be called upon about Black matters for Black males. And when you experience this, sometimes you kind of feel stressed, you feel overwhelmed, you feel like you can't speak for all folks. And when you can't perform in a certain way, the violence that is inflicted is more of like your job position, if you can move up or not, or if you're called upon to be an asset to your own community because you're not working in ways in which they want you to work in. And this is all inherited in whiteness also, that I'll probably go more into on the next question or so. But yeah, this is just how I experience interpersonal violence professionally and personally.
I have no doubt that when we go into how, this violence is reinforced, that white supremacy might come up again. So we will absolutely expect to hear more about that. Curtis?
Yeah, well, Dr. Webster, if you think it's hard going behind the 2 ladies, try going behind the 2 ladies and you. So for me, the violence, I think my first experience was I was raised by my grandparents, and then witnessing them having kind of heated arguments and moments like that in the house as a young child. I think the next major one was there was a store one time, I think I was about 9 or 10 years old. We were going into the store, but in another car parked close to us, there was a man beating this woman, and you can hear her screaming. And at that time, it disturbed me so much, I almost became nauseated from hearing that. And then, like Conrad, Dr. Webster said, growing up through school, you had the gang violence at first. When I was younger, it was racial gang violence. When I got older in high school, it was more the gang sets violence. And a lot of times what we have as men is we have gaps in our character of who we are and who we need to be, because we didn't have male role models in our lives, positive male role models in our lives to show us who that was. So we substituted with that controlling, domineering, demanding, behavior, and we substitute that as manhood, thinking that's the way we should be. And then we start to express those things in our relationships with our significant others, with family members, with friends, with our children. So it just becomes this cycle that we continue to repeat. And in my family, there has been my grandfather, my father, and on down to me, there was violence, all around, very significant violence. And then the fact that when I was about 16 months old, my mother was brutally murdered in front of me. So even though I don't have a physical recollection of that, that has left an imprint in my subconscious and in my cellular memory as far as trauma. So that's one of the ways that a person can become violent or an offender, is through genetic transformation. So all of those are a part of my life. But like Dr. Webster said, like Dr. Webster said, I wanted to break that generational curse. Like Talisa was saying, it's a generational curse, and I definitely wanted to break that. For a long time, I didn't understand where it was coming from, but I understood that it was me being a hurt individual, hurting individuals, and I had to heal myself and see value in myself, and it came from low self-esteem. So if I couldn't value myself, I couldn't value others. Sorry to interrupt you, Mary. Go ahead.
No, I really like to just light a candle for just people that might be suffering tonight and suffering today, and and for those that have gone on, like your mother. So I will do that after the next question. I just like to have a candle and keep thoughtful of that. But I wanted to add 2 more: bullying and colorism. And I think those occur a lot within our culture and have been normalized.
Thank you for that, Mary. Both the
Yeah,
cast and those added thoughts.
I just want to second. I just want to second that. Definitely, I've been told by elder mentors in the community that I'm not going to be accepted, and there's a certain way that I have to act because my skin is lighter, because my mom is Asian. That's violent. It hurts you like inside, you know? I did a couple of trainings with the YMCA, who is also a violent organization. But what I found out during these trainings is that when you are like when you get hurt, like your feelings get hurt, it sets up the same receptors in your brain are set off, um, as if you are in physical pain. So your brain doesn't know the difference between emotional pain and physical pain.
Thank you. Wow, that was definitely a lot that we just touched on. Like we talked about the home, we talked about the workplace, we talked about really we pulled culture into it when we brought up when we talk about bullying and colorism. Those are things that are also, you know, a cultural reinforcement of this more interpersonal violence that we're seeing. And we really touched on a lot here. What I'm hearing also is how, you know, these experiences that we have when we're viewing relationships early on in our lives really do have a huge effect on the relationships that we have ourselves and the ways in which we show up in them. So that was something that also stood out for me. Let's get into the third question because we really did start getting there with the course of the conversation, and kind of the connections that you all are making with your experiences. So this is really just, in what ways have you observed interpersonal violence being reinforced by culture, institutions? And again, we kind of already went into this a little bit, but let's definitely call out these connections and call out these normalizations a little bit more here so that we can be critical, and know really what we're healing from and what tools we need to heal from it once we get to that point of the conversation. So sorry, just to repeat, in what ways have you observed interpersonal violence being reinforced by culture and institutions?
Institutionalized police brutality is a big one. Violence within the prison and jail systems is another. Inmates are suffering from a false reality that violence is a way of life. They experience it institutionally and most likely did in their households growing up too. The women's suffrage movement, is another big one. Women of every color have suffered since the beginning of time as we know it. Although suffering for different reasons, we all bleed the same color. War attacks reinforced by the culture of our government normalizes the act of interpersonal violence within our societies as a whole. Communities have economically suffered because of it. And there's a book, This is an Uprising, How Nonviolent Revolt is Shaping the 21st Century, that I read last year and for school, and it drew my attention to the fact that despite the demonstrated power of mass mobilizations to alter the political landscape, only few prominent organizations have been willing to pursue strategies of militant nonviolence. A memoir also that I read, written by Wangari Maathai, titled Unbowed, opened my eyes to how much interpersonal violence was practiced in Africa before and after colonialism. I wish I understood these concepts when I traveled to live in Kenya myself at such a young age. I would have planted trees with locals, cultivating crops instead of further corrupting them with westernized educational structures, white dominance, you want to be like me, like you want to be like me, myself, and I, right? Like every man for himself. We need to start over, honestly, to me, myself, and I, and then me, myself for you.
How poetic. Wow. So yeah, that was definitely about how these systems of violence are being normalized, not only, here, but globally. So that was, thank you for pointing that out.
Well, one was mentioned earlier about certainly in the community where there's trafficking or sexual violence, around prostitution and that. Many of the people I know that's been involved in that or on the fringes of that, uh, that's normalized all throughout the family, and folks are groomed into those types of roles. So then you got to touch back on the abuse and neglect, which happens especially to children and young adults. Um, Again, being groomed for other things later. And then the other one that I thought about was well, she mentioned the prisons in that, and police violence, but also sometimes in the churches. I think about how many people during the HIV/AIDS era, especially, were ostracized from their church. When they came out as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, and then we know that the statistics say that transgender folks are the most at risk. As far as being violently killed before they're even 40 years old. So we still have a long way to come as far as making that a lot more less normalized. It's like those folks those are our brothers, sisters, uncles, nieces, and nephews. And so we gotta stand up for them.
I think I can go on for decades about violence and how it shows up in culture. I'm going to use four. I'm going to talk about police brutality, which has been one of a highlighted focus in the country for decades, but has been amplified even more since the death of Trayvon Martin, and how we have normalized the death of unarmed Black men, women, trans, non-binary folks through Snapchat videos, images on YouTube, to where our folks are seeing this and thinking this is like what happens to us when we are in the streets. And if we are in certain spaces that we're not supposed to be, it's another genocide of what they tried to do to our Black folks since the 1920s, and the migration from Africa here, but enslaved migration, because we didn't want to come here. And then we can talk about the criminalization of African-American males and women in our K through 12 school system, to again, where there are hyper surveillance. We have policies created in place to exclude them from the classroom, just from cultural behavior that doesn't match with white supremacy. And then we also have white racial frameworks, which talks about how white dominance uses other cultures to attack Black narratives or Black thoughts. And we use this as a counter storytelling model to talk to our kids and tell us about their experiences. But in white supremacy, we're often not able to do those things. So you can see those violence in those such ways. And then the peer-to-peer violence, where we call it lateral violence, where we put Black folks against each other or people of color against each other instead of their oppressors. We have the media influences. You can see this through hair. Black women should have straight hair when they're coming into professional workplace. Men have to have a certain professional look. You can't have dreads, or you can't have so many tattoos. Women, you have to dress a certain way. And these are not my opinions. Just letting y'all know that. don't think I'm putting my women and men down. or non-binary folks and trans folks down, but this is the image that they tell us that we have to be. And then now we are amplifying these images through our young kids. They're not, they want to hypersexualize our kids through the Instagrams and the Facebooks, from the things that they wear. You see these in the commercials now, and it's harming our community in ways that we haven't seen much before. And now we're also seeing the gender violence also, for when folks are expressing who their true identity is. You have the pushback of the larger community. The Black feminist is not even mentioned as much in our LGBTQ plus community. The violence of that, and seeking their identity from their in the community in which they want to be inclusive with. The list goes on. And I feel like in order for us as a culture to build upon, or not build upon, but to dismantle these oppressions, it first comes with a social awareness. If we don't have a social awareness of what's going on, how we inherited whiteness and how whiteness plays within us, regardless if you're a person of color, we all have lived in and out of this country. And whiteness has been spread across this country because we live in this nation and other countries, because we live in a racialized society that we cannot get rid of. Yet, I would say yet. We're pushing for it, but it starts with that cultural awareness. And once we build up on a cultural awareness, then we can start having these honest conversations with each other about what we need to change, first for self and then our larger community. I feel like because of these oppressions and interpersonal violences, we have moved away from community and focused more on individual. And you have seen this lost in how our community folks look after each other's children. We don't do that as such like we used to anymore. I remember my parents talking to me about, how the community used to look out for each other. You had community groups, community watches. Now it's like, it's hard to even talk to a young adult because you feel like you might get interpersonal violence from them because you're not a peer that seems to have authority with them. So again, it starts with having that cultural awareness, and then we can start having these honest conversations with each other of what we need to do collectively to move without any titles being in the way of such conversations.
It's hard to follow that. A lot was said, but I'm gonna strive to approach it from the standpoint of manhood and being a male, where from early on you're taught to suppress your feelings, not to cry. I know my father, that was the thing that set him off with me. And I'm an emotional type person. I don't know, I always have been. So it was easy for me to cry. So that set my dad off. If you see me crying, can't cry. So having to suppress those feelings and emotions and not being able to learn how to process them in a healthy way. You start to internalize that stuff. Then you get these other messages from the media and society, survival of the fittest. There's a song back in the day, only the strong will survive. It's called Survival, and different things like that. So we start to now see these things in these movies. And when we get up where we're interacting with people in society, that's the way we express it, especially since we haven't been taught to express it intellectually, that we do it physically. So if somebody looks at me the wrong way, what you looking at? Why are you looking at me that way? Or somebody talks to you in a certain way, like Talisa was talking about earlier. We start to now express that in a physical way, those things that we're feeling. When she was talking about the brain can't determine between physical pain and emotional or mental pain. So now when somebody hurts us in an emotional way or in a mental way, we express our dissatisfaction with that physically. So it's from the things that we've been taught that we see that they've normalized in movies, and they've gotten more and more violent. I was, what's this new movie that just came? Oh, Suicide Squad. And I was just looking at all the violence. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't watch this. I don't want my kid to watch it, but it's causing me to turn my head and close my eyes. So just unnecessary violence that we see just to stimulate our minds in a way that they want. So yeah, it's just the things that we see all the time through media and those messages that have been ingrained in us that has that attached to it.
Can I piggyback real quick? So the normalization of suppressing our feelings is really big. And this intact amplifies why a lot of Black males are committing suicide, are approaching these gangs to get some type of identity that makes them super masculine. And these things have been harming our community for a while. And it transpires to other genders when these things happen. One thing I didn't hit on about institutions, which is really, really big for folks out there who have children who are entering college. We see the biggest reinforced interpersonal violence is when they're writing their application to get accepted into a school. What happens is children think they have to talk about a bad story in their life in order for them to get accepted. And these institutions play into that model to say, oh, we have a low income, marginalized students who's coming, and we posterize these folks from the trauma that they lived through. And that is super huge. And these kids feel like they have to carry on these stories for the rest of their lives in order for them to maintain this academic success or education or this scholarship that they received because they were low income. And we need to get rid of that narrative. No, you don't have to talk about the struggles that your parents went through. Now it's like a TikTok sensation. You all have seen it. Like they're saying their mom was a prostitute or something. Like it's a little slight jokes in there, but it also has undertones of trauma that people really experience. So we really need to get rid of that. And we also need to talk about those things because every Black folk, Latinx, Chicano, have not been in those, not had those experiences. But every time that we are talking about that, they're making that as the stereotype for us. So we need to speak up, have those kind of narratives, and tell the true story of whom you are and why you should be accepted. You're an asset to any institution that you step up on. And I'm glad that we are seeing a high number of Black and brown students entering out HBCUs and getting away from these PWIs because they're not really welcoming. And if you have to talk about a story in which ways to reinforce trauma, that's not an institution for you. I am a product of the HBCU and PWI, and there's no diss to PWIs. You know, some of them are trying, they getting there. But I really would like to see our true self show up in those spaces and show them whom we are and how academic success really looks like for a person of color without reinforcing the trauma.
Wow, you really just my years of college all came flashing before my eyes. And those college application letters, let me tell you, they are notorious because it's really just what is the worst thing that ever happened to you? And it really does reinforce for Black and brown youth that, oh no, you are that story of trauma, whatever it is that's in your family. Even as, there's trying to be this disruption of trauma and a challenging of generations of struggle and oppression. So that's such a good point. And it actually, in a way, brings us to, the last understanding, the last question, which is just how what can we actually do? How can we change our behavior? How can we change the way that we think to heal ourselves, our communities? What messages do our youth need to be hearing? We kind of talked about how, in a way, this adultification and hypersexualization of our youth, that culturally reinforces a lot of the interpersonal violence that they're facing. By the time they're our age, they have so much to unlearn, so much to heal from. How can we interrupt those patterns in our community?
Right. So I had some help with because I had to really, ask my mom and my Grammy about this question, right? Because first of all, it's going to be a generational thing. And as a 26-year-old young woman, I'm not going to have all the answers to myself. Meditation, that's helped me a lot. Forgiveness, acceptance, communication, conflict resolution. As silly as it sounds, Kelso's choices, literally, I had to have Kelso's choices on my screen paper, on my wallpaper for my telephone to just remember how simple conflict resolution can be, right? Prayer, quality time with family and nature at the table, these things help communication flourish. People aren't born domestically violent. It's a learned behavior, much like what Curtis was touching on, that they're exposed to at young ages. Because of this, violence isn't always overt. It's built into the core system like a known instinctual thing. How are you going to know something without seeing and experiencing it? Children learn by example. When we experience trauma, the age we experience it pauses until we deal with that trauma. What does normal and healthy look like in a relationship when you've never seen it? Perhaps a developmental program in partnership with people having healthy family dynamics, showing victims and aggressors what normal looks like would work well in denormalizing interpersonal violence. Other community members willing to hang out and give their time to a healing cause. People do volunteer work for healing causes all the time, you know, like a big brother, big sister type of thing, probably best for examples and boundaries of people's cultures and ethnicities. So what I'm saying is, like, we need to have somebody that represents the community they serve. We cannot be having white people teach us how to not be violent. Okay. It's just more violence. It messes with our own self-identity. You can talk about the theory of violence all day long, but like children, we learn through example. Like adults, we learn through lived experience. In order to know normal, you have to experience and see it. Creating safe spaces within community organizations to discuss studies of political structures and nonviolence is also a great way for individuals to see the problem of violence in society as a whole and decide to stand against it themselves in their community and in their interpersonal relationships.
Okay, well, man, she covered the waterfront again. Man, uh, well, I'm a 51-year-old woman. I'm probably the oldest one here today. I don't know, Curtis. I think I got you beat. No, you right there with me? Okay. Well, anyway, I will tell you that for me, as a young person, there came a point where I had to have sort of a reckoning with myself. For me, the way that looked was it was drugs and alcohol. But I had come to a point in my life where I had to surrender because I did not know what to do. And so that was a very humbling experience. Um, it introduced me to some things like meditation and prayer. You know, I had a God in my life, but that really, really brought me back to God, you know. And but I think sometimes we need that humility before we can really, you know, be open and really open up to another way, you know, not the world, not the ways of the world, but you know, the ways of the internal spirit and feeling whole within. And she did touch on a lot of those things. The three things that I would bring out is, first of all, we have to do more of this, what we're doing, talk about the stigma, because we don't talk about mental illness. We don't really talk about domestic violence that much in forums like these with people like us. And so I would love to just see that more normalized, where we talk about like, hey, that's not okay. You know, that's not okay for us to hit on each other and stuff like that. You know, so I would love to see more of destigmatizing, um, and especially getting mental health help and domestic violence help before the police need to get involved. See, that's the hard part, because a lot of times when stuff is going on, folks go into secrecy mode, right? And so that's not helpful in the long run. So I know we got like the 800 domestic violence hotline, but that don't always get it. We do need people doing the outreach, and in those places and spaces, like at the doctors, you know, you want to see people who look like you. That helps. But my mom is white, and I definitely got a lot of help from other white folks along the way that were caring people that helped me see something. They still had something to share with me and to teach me. Um, but like ideally, I've only had one Black doctor. I would love to have a Black doctor that I can, really relate to as another Black woman. So I don't know. I feel like, Creator brings people to our path. I would love to see just many more of us in fields where we can reach out and help each other. So that whole stigma piece, then the support piece. I think we need way more supports in place, even folks with just diabetes and other chronic health issues. Those are some of the most common things in our communities: heart disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes. There should be free exercise classes at every hospital one night a week. You know what I mean? We could rotate it around the city, but just that basic healthcare stuff, it don't seem like for our community that it's a priority, and we just see so many people fall to that. So destigmatizing, having way more support, and not just the church, other forms of support too. And then the third one is just that healing. I'm a big fan of Iyanla Van Zant, and the reason why is because I love to watch that show, Fix My Life. She just ended her season, and she's going off the air. But the way that she does culturally specific counseling with folks, spiritual counseling with folks, is so powerful. And I wish we just had many more practitioners like her. I will say myself, as a person who's been in the helping fields for 20 plus years, there's a lot of places I don't want to work because it's violent to work there as a practitioner. So my only other option is, Curtis, help me start up my own business. Let me get in with African Town, But I would love to just see more places and spaces for us, by us, and just quality care, Black, white, or otherwise. But you're right. I would love to get my own people, because I think we reach our own people much better than other people can.
I just have to say that having a therapist that was a Black woman, a woman of color, it was a game changer for me. It changed my life completely. I thought that it was hopeless. I thought it was hopeless. I thought I was always going to have the violent issues that I had. I thought I would always think and feel the way that I was thinking and feeling. But it was when I actually started to speak to somebody, another Black woman, about it, and in the Asian community, they don't do mental health. I'm just going to be real with you. They don't do that, they just don't. Right. So being able to talk to another Black woman, that it changed my life.
Well, some of them do. I had an Asian counselor and she changed my life. She was helping me get through a hard work situation. I've had an Asian counselor. I've had white counselors. I had a sister. I've had a couple gay men, and it worked. Sometimes it worked for a while and then it didn't work and I needed somebody else. But I really feel like Creator brings people to our path. And so we learn what we can. There was one more thing I wanted to say, but I'll see if it comes back. I want to let the brothers get in on it. But Tylisha, yeah, you are right on the money. You've brought some wonderful things today and sparked me to think about a lot.
A great poet said, "Melodies from heaven rain down on me." That's for you, Mary. She keep talking about the Creator. But it starts. I think we need to start with counseling. Like straight up, I think everybody has experienced trauma. I don't care if you Black, white. Everybody has experienced it, and this hate, abuse is a public issue and a public health issue that needs to be talked about in all platforms and subdivisions, in ways in which these mechanisms show up. I would love to see more counseling from our Black folks, but if we're going to be realistic, and this is, we got to be real. In society today, and we're in a capitalist society, it doesn't pay well. This is why you don't see folks in there. And we also see interest conversions in which white folks are pushing us to these STEM practices more than the practices that we need to create healing for our community. So we got to be real about that. We got to talk about it. Like, how can we come into these spaces and actually talk about it? And I have expressed this in the question before. We have to eliminate those titles that we hold on to. Just because I'm a Christian man or a Muslim man don't mean I can't talk to you if you don't have the same beliefs. Just having that conversation is going to open up a lot, though, for us to get there. We also, I can't throw off my educational hat, but I feel like at home is the womb, but the educational system is the crib. And a lot happens in that crib. A lot of safety happens in that crib. Sometimes home isn't the best safe place to be, but they find a connection somewhere in that educational system that can help them. Even though it has some colonial mechanisms in it, there's still somebody there. And we need to redo our educational system. They're learning a lot there. And if we know they're learning a lot there before they get back out to the community, this is where we need to attack. This is where we need to get more folks of color in there. And y'all probably heard the saying, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So we can get them in there, but they ain't gonna mean they for us. We need to vet better. And when we vet better, we do better. Just because they're your kinfolk don't mean that they're good for every kid because it happened with you. No. We need that basis of background. Also, in our educational system, they shouldn't have to wait till they get to higher education to learn about real US society, and how racialized this country is, and this mechanisms of oppression and colonialism and white supremacy, and harm that it conflicts on all of our kids. If we are putting that in the K through 12 school system, a lot of eyes will brighten up, right? And then we should also make counseling free. We got to make this free for everybody, because some folks don't have the money, the insurance for it. It's harming us. But let's talk about the biggest harm that we have currently right now, and this is with the COVID. Due to the COVID vaccination, a lot of harm is also happening to folks who don't want to take it. And the biggest harm is happening to our people of color. From all the tests that they have did in the past, a lot of folks are nervous, afraid, scared that some of the results are going to come back and inflict more harm on us. Women may not be able to give birth. We're also seeing my home state talking about abortion. Women can't have abortions at certain weeks, and I don't want to put out my state like that because I feel like I feel like my city is good.
Or Florida.
But yeah, these are the things that's harming us. Like, we need a big wake up call. This is a state of emergency for anybody who's out there listening. We're in a state of emergency. Let's start making these things happen now. These conversations happen now. Let's get some Facebook groups going. Let's get some resource building, resource allocations going, money going, because we're in a capitalist society, money has to flow too. I know somebody know how to make a grant, write a grant. So let's do it. And I think that's how it starts.
Yeah, just real quick before we pass things over to Curtis, I really want to say I appreciate this analysis for our youth, because the way that our youth are educated goes hugely towards reinforcing and perpetuating and normalizing the violence that they will experience in their lives. And then also what you're talking about, where we have youth not even learning. Like, I remember my college experience, it was extremely traumatic to get to college and then learn, that essentially everything you learned from K through 12 was a lie that was meant to pacify you. because at that point, you know, our youth are like, okay, my whole life is a lie. What do I do? It's such a discouraging moment that, you know, education is really, it really is a tool for our healing and a tool for moving our communities into a position where we're thriving. I really appreciated that point of intervention for our youth. And then Curtis, if you wanted to say something about this wonderful healing that we bring in about and tools for denormalizing the violence.
Curtis, before you talk, I got to rebuttal that piece about the pregnancy. For the record, the CDC is currently saying with this Delta variant, we need to make sure pregnant women are getting vaccinated. So that part about not being able to have children and all that, do your research. That has not been an accurate statistic. Please do your research. Go to
But
places you trust, not
some
TikTok and Facebook.
right, but
Say that, Mary.
there I do want to second the fear of people in our community. And like, you know, Tuskegee was not that long ago. Syphilis, hello, they were killing us on purpose, literally. And it started where George Washington Carver was from. Okay, they don't care about us.
There's a lot of justifiable hesitancy and mistrust that the Black community and communities of color have around the vaccine, for sure. For me, I always try to remind myself that we're in a first world country. And so when it comes to things like a vaccine, I always want to take a global lens. And for me, just seeing how desperate other places are for the vaccine and seeing how the United States has vaccines that are expiring rather than give them to the Black and brown countries that need them. It's kind of reading first world problems. Like we got to realize where we have privilege sometimes.
That's a great point.
Yeah. But okay, let's let Curtis have the floor for the solutions and how we can heal.
So for me, that's what my whole coaching practice was based around, right? There used to be a commercial, Hair Club for Men. And the guy at the end would come on and say, not only am I the president, I'm a client. So I'm my biggest case study for violence and turning around and being able to overcome that. Due to the trauma and the pain and the hurt that I was feeling, I was acting out violently all the time. Real quick temper, short temper. So the whole bit about coaching and what I share through that comes from the things that I've learned to deal with that. And the biggest thing is self-awareness and mindfulness. And this is what I kind of mentioned in my introduction. I help people be their best self. I always wanted to be my best self. I never wanted there to be an obstacle for me being the best that I could be. I'm not going to be perfect, but I don't want there to be anything that I say I could have done that I didn't do that would have made me better. So this has to be the first thing, that a person has to be mindful and aware of who they are and what their belief system is. This is one of the things that we were taught in domestic violence training or anger management training: belief, thoughts, feelings, and actions. Your belief determines your thoughts determine your feelings, and your feelings would generally determine what type of action you take. Now, not only should we be aware of those things, we should be aware of how we think of ourselves, because a lot of where mine came from was a low self-esteem and a low self-image. So I had to use that violence to be able to not really let people see how bad I felt about myself or how much I disliked myself. So being aware of those beliefs, those self-beliefs about I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, I'm not that. And then being aware of how those things show up or are triggered in your interactions with other people. So this is a way we can individually work on these things, right? As collectively, as a group, what I see a lot is we don't hold each other accountable or don't support one another, especially during my times when I was going through those issues. I didn't want to share that with anybody. I didn't want those people to know that side about me. And it's kind of scary revealing that now, you know, as far along as I've come and my status in society has changed. Because I remember when the time you said my name, I didn't get the same reaction when somebody heard my name, you know, or as I do now. And I think about that a lot. And like somebody else was saying, you know, even in church, I remember one time I had went through some stuff. And when I got up to repent and ask for forgiveness in church, I had people giving me the side eye and kind of whispering underneath their breath. So I didn't even have a support system there. So I didn't have a safe space where I felt that I could go and share these things and get help and express myself and find somebody who would help me be accountable in my healing. So I think we need to provide like this, like you talked about, spaces like this where conversations to be had, people feel safe and sharing. And it helps us also to understand we're not the only ones. A lot of times we get trapped into that thought that I'm the only person going through this, or I'm the only person that has this going on. But there's a lot of other people having that going on and are hiding just like we do. And if we have these spaces where we can get it out, we can understand that, yeah, this is a common issue and it's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about, and that we can get help and support from others like us. So one of the things with the Africa Town that we do every month is a Black Health and Wellness meetup, where we address certain things that go on in our community. It takes place the second Saturday of every month, but also some other programs. We have Arisha de Awadola that we work with, who came up with root psychology. And what she does is she trains facilitators to become ancestral healing circle facilitators. So we have that. And then there's another lady that we work with recently. Her name is Katura Bryant, and she came up with something called the Zola experience, which is a 7-step process to grief, recovery, and loss. So these circles are going on as they're training facilitators. The facilitators are starting circles and opening up spaces like this where conversations can be had and people can get the help and support that they need.
Can you say again, second Saturday, the wellness?
Yeah, right now it's virtually. It takes place the second Saturday of every month, and it's called the Black Health and Wellness Meetup.
Okay,
The next one that is taking place, I think, is September 16th or whatever the second Saturday is in September. And it's going to be at the Liberty Bank building.
So we can just go on Africa Town website and find that?
Yep. And you're posting this, right?
I just put the Black Health Wellness Meetup second Saturday.
I can put the link in the the comments of the live post, and that way we can access.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah, and and that's the thing. I think we're hungry for spaces like this, really. It's just a matter of get more of us to be able to go out and do them circles and have them talk in circles.
So one of the things with the Zola experience training, they're paying folks, I believe, $100 to come learn how to be a facilitator. It's a 2-day training. It's about, I think, 4 hours each day. It goes from like 9 to 1. So they're paying $100 for a person to come in, learn how to facilitate those circles, and then you can go right out from there and start facilitating the healing in the community.
Dude, I might already know how to facilitate circles, but I might come anyway because I love these things where we're giving healers additional tools and additional resources.
Exactly.
I think that's so important.
Yes.
Kind of to that same thought, we are also having a community event next weekend that's called Heal the Healers. And this is an event that has been made in community. And it's really about what you're talking about, Curtis. Like, how do we offer a moment of reprieve for the folks who are operating and healing through their trauma, we're creating healing for other people, while we're trying to process our own. How do we create a moment of peace for those people? And that's really, that's how we make this healing sustainable and make it where, we're passing this healing down generation to generation. So thank you so much for bringing up, specific programming that we already have, that's to the tune of what we need.
Yeah, please share the details of that one too, so we can share it out over our platforms as well.
Will do, absolutely. So if anyone has any last moments or thoughts from the panel, I'll give you guys a moment for that, and then we'll get into some of these questions and comments.
I just want to say that during this pandemic, one of the things that's been a great support for me is Zoom. Like you were just talking about, we got first world country problems, and I thought about, the fact that, we have a platform like Zoom and how Zoom, has exploded. But I was able to do all my 12-step meetings on Zoom, and continue to have that support. And then there's another space that I belong to for peer counselors called Community Life. And I've really built some strong bonds with the people on there. So I know how many people suffered through the pandemic and got depressed and, drank more and smoked more. And there is stuff out there, guys, especially in this city that we live in. We're very fortunate, So reach out, talk to other people, call people, just use the regular telephone and just give somebody a call you ain't talked to in a long while, and just check on them, because there's something about that connection that we do culturally. Everybody don't do that. So reach out to each other and just love on each other a little bit.
Great point. I just want to say thank you, Selena, for creating something like this, like giving us a space to, girl, I see you. I see you. You're literally out here changing the world. Thank you. And no, seriously, like this much more than I even realized, like preparing for this, right? I was so nervous. Like that's why I'm not on camera right now. I was so nervous to talk at something like this because I've never really spoken out about my stuff personally. I mean, I've written grants to get like money for organizations to go like for stuff kind of similar to this, but I've never really like touched on like, whoa, like, what's going on now with me and the community and like my space and the community and everybody else who feels like that too. So it was an honor. I was so nervous, but it's an honor.
Oh, well, thank you
didn't
so
have a
much for
reason
your
to be nervous
courage.
'cause you killed it.
Yeah. Thank you all for your courage and for your willingness and for your stories and your analysis. There was so much that was just so good that needed to be said that was said today. And I feel like you really have introduced some new ways of thinking for folks, some new things to think about for folks. And we definitely have some questions and comments that we are going to go through. One person was actually just really happy to see men being a part of this conversation. That was just a comment, but I actually would love for the men on the panel to just take a moment. Why are you willing to tell your story? Why is this so important to you to be here?
I'll start this time, Dr. Webster. I'll give you a chance. So for me, it was important because, like I said, once I made my transformation, and it's a work in process, right? So just Mary, you're talking about 12 steps. I liken it to that. You will always be an abuser, and it's always something you have to be mindful of, and it's always something that you're going to be working on. So for me, that's the case. But once I kind of turned the corner and made that shift and transition, I wanted to be that support person for other men. I wanted to be that person that could kind of share a story, kind of put it out there, and help other people to make the transformation that I did, and really wanted to do that. And I made it an opportunity, or made it a mission of mine that every opportunity that I got to speak about it, that I would. So it was very much an honor to be asked to be on here and speak and be a part of this panel.
All right. I ain't gonna get emotional, but it's liberating. I was in a very, very dark space not too long ago, and I didn't have as many tools that I needed to express what was going on with me. And that's the talk that I had earlier about committing suicide. And I know there's young men out there who are experiencing these things. And a good friend of mine named Cameron Burrell, famous track athlete who recently just committed suicide, needed somebody to talk to. So I'm here today to be that voice, to push for Black men such as myself, or Black male identified, to 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 liberate each other. We have to pull each other up. There's not many of us in the field who's doing that. It's not many of us in the community that's doing that. And that's no knock to folks who's not doing it. We just need to pull you in. We're gonna love on you in different ways. And when we pull you in, it's gonna make us better as men and society better. Because we won't be inflicting these harms on ourselves or the other people in our community. So that's my why I'm here.
Wow. Thank you both so much for sharing that as well. That's wonderful. That lived experience. It be real out here, don't it? Let me tell you, it's critical. Okay, so now getting into the other questions, there's a few, so we're gonna try to. What are some books and podcasts that you would recommend on addressing like denormalizing interpersonal violence?
Well, I am a big academic. The one thing I will tell you, I mean, I didn't get to go to a black college. I wanted to go to Spelman, but my parents was like, "No, you too wild. You ain't going down." Anyway, but one thing that I make part of my weekly diet is Revolt Black News. And I love Ebony K. Williams. I think she does an excellent job. And you can find it in your local guide, but it's also on YouTube. They do a lot of entertainment stuff too, but the actual news, the Revolt Black News, I really find very, very powerful. And I just love the way that she does her reporting. But as far as podcasts, there's a couple that I like. There's one that it's about teaching white folks. I have to actually look at my phone, but I'll list some things in the chat.
Okay.
There's stuff out here that really does feed me, and I try and share it with my peers whenever I can.
Yeah.
Okay, so Converge Media, Treyana Holiday, she does a ton of really good, like she covers so many different topics, right? This girl is amazing, and she's right here, she's right local, right? So just go up and look online for Converge Media. They have a lot of different podcasts on things covering topics like these. Also, Psych to Go is a YouTube channel. Like it's spelled like psych, and then the number 2, and then just go, right? They're great. They helped me. There was a point where I was listening to more Psych to Go than I was hanging out with friends. Okay, it's real good. The books that I had mentioned earlier were let's see. Well, there was Unbowed by Wangari Maathai, and that's all about like institutionalized violence, right? And then
put the spelling for those into the chat so I can copy.
Yeah, I'll do that. And then also the book, This is an Uprising, How Nonviolent Revolt is Shaping the 21st Century. That one was good. That one was a good one. And it was just written recently. Yeah, I could go on about books, I read books. I'll keep it short.
Anyone else? Okay, I just want to throw out a book called Beyond Survival that really was amazing. I actually got it through the free book people. I forgot what they're called because my brain is barely working these days. But it's a great book that is written by organizers, and they're just talking about like how do we get our communities beyond survival so that we're actually thriving. And it really talks about tools about like even how one of the most impactful chapters for me was like, how do you work with folks who have committed harm but want to do better, because there's not a lot of programming around that at all. And I thought it was extremely impacting and challenged my way of thinking. So I want to put that on there too. It's called Beyond Survival. Okay, so the next one is.
Oh, I got some books.
Oh, I had a couple
too.
One book that I have is called Breathe, a guide healing journal for Black men. It's by Brian Allen Steele. Then another book called Dear Black Boy by my good friend Martellus Bennett. This is for African-American men who think sports is all they have. He wrote a book for young children to read up on. So I'm dropping that in the chat currently right now. And yeah.
For me, I had, like I was saying in the beginning, it's all about belief system and reprogramming our mind to think differently, putting things in there so that when we get into these situations, we've already programmed our mind to respond or react in a certain way, and we aren't triggered emotionally just to react to something. So one of the books is by James Allen. It's called As a Man Thinketh. So that's a very good book, and being able to hear how your thoughts determine your reality. Another one is called At the Feet of the Master. It's by Jiddu Krishnamurti. And it's based on 4 concepts, very similar to the book, The 4 Agreements, which is the next book I'm going to share. But it's based on discrimination, desirelessness, good conduct, and love. So it's a little, looks like a post-it notepad. You could probably read it in about 15 minutes, but it's so powerful. And then the other one is The 4 Agreements with Don Miguel Ruiz. It's just powerful ways to reprogram
Love
our
that
minds
book.
to think and react in different ways and have those alternatives to the violence that we're used to or accustomed to.
Whew.
The other thing I want to just mention too is on YouTube, there is several people on there that have powerful messaging that are Black and brown people. So I do subscribe to several people's YouTube channels. I'm not going to say no names, but you guys, please support, other folks out there trying to do exactly this kind of work. And then the other thing is just some of folks' narrative. I had got a book about 3 years ago called Rabbit by Miss Pat. And I got it because I knew she was formerly incarcerated and I had heard her story was very powerful. Well, this week, come to find out, Miss Pat is about to have a TV show come out and she's a stand-up comedian. I didn't know Miss Pat was a comedian. I had seen her even, and I didn't realize that was the Miss Pat that wrote the book. And just some of the narratives that are out there, some of the actresses, what's the name? The mother of Black Hollywood. Taraji's got a book. Tiffany Haddish has a book. There's just some brilliant people out there. Just their stories are so compelling. And so, just really read our people's stuff. It is fascinating, and there's a lot to learn from each other.
Absolutely. There's a wealth of knowledge in our community. So many people who have made an offering towards our healing. So
can I add one more when it comes to actual racial? It's a book called My Grandmother's Hands. The author's name is Resma. That's another one that's very powerful in being able to deal with violence and racial trauma. Yeah.
Also mediocre. I can't remember her first name, but the last name is Aluau. She did So You Want to Talk About Race. I read her book Mediocre.
Yeah, Ijeoma. And she's here. She's in town, so we could even get her to come out.
Yeah, that's true. She lives in Shoreline. I know. Yes. We could get her to come out if we really do.
Clubs. Okay, I'm trying to.
I'm down for that.
We have so many books. I'm so excited to post all these resources into the comment sections for folks to be able to just look up. I actually just got an old Kindle off the Buy Nothing in my neighborhood. I might have to start download some of these onto it.
And the other thing is book studies too. Like I do a book study once a week with some other women. And so get with others and read these little books and then talk it over, or even movies that come out, talk it over with amongst ourselves. Because a lot of times, like I'll see stuff in the media or on the news or whatever, and I need to talk about it. And I need to talk about it with Black people that understand, and I don't have to explain everything about the backstory too. You know what I'm saying? So it's powerful for us to just build community and support each other.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's see. Folks are wanting to know, just have you repeat your contact information or who you're associated with. And then if we can also just drop it into the comments, I'll add it for folks who want to reach out to you all. We have so many resources. This is amazing. Oh shoot, I lost my place. Oh, here I am. At first I thought I lost my place. I was like, oh no, how am I gonna? Okay, so while you all are adding your contact information to the chat, I am making sure I have all of your resources for folks because there are a lot of books, there are YouTube channels, different readings that have been posted. So And that's absolutely right. Comedy. There are, Black comedians out here who are not doing harmful comedy or comedy at the expense of Black people, but rather.
Well, and I said that just because laughter is healing. Sometimes
absolutely.
I've had a hard day and I kind of just forget, like, man, I just need to put on some comedy and laugh, or
I heard that.
and it's like, oh my gosh, sometimes just a real good, it can even be stupid, like nothing too intellectually straining. It could be herbal or something. Just watching some oldies, and it just to laugh, it's healing. There's something about that. So just, remember, laughter can heal some stuff too.
Absolutely. That is not to be, our joy is absolutely healing, and it always has been. So we definitely can remember that as a part of how we're going to get our communities past, normalized violence. Oh my gosh.
Oh, the other one I just found out was, did you know AARP has a sisters? Part of one of the things on AARP's website is called AARP Sisters. Blew my mind. They got some really wonderful things on there. And there's actually one little workout station in every state because they want to encourage wellness. And we have ours for this area is up in Renton. There's a little, it's a little workout area, and they have all these different, outdoor, not really machines, but different things for you to stretch and different things. And sponsored by AARP. So there's a lot of stuff out there. It's just, man, having the time to really look it up and then network with others.
Yes, absolutely. And just letting people know as well, because, information, it is priceless. So I'm definitely going to be getting these resources copied down for folks, getting your information copied down. And let's move on to our last couple of questions here, make sure we get everyone out on time. So what are any other trainings or educations for healers to stay up to date on best practices? I know we were just talking about some, trainings for healing circles came up. So I think if there are any other, resources along that thread that anyone knows of, I would love to copy those down as well. Any training or education for healers that any of you know of?
I would say I've been studying with this African spiritualist group for about the past year now. They're the Asara Set Society, and the organizer is Haru. He does qigong in the park. Qigong is a great practice for healing. It connects places in the body to places that need to heal in the mind, right? So I'll put that in the chat. You'll have to do a little bit more research on it.
That's great. I'll piggyback off that. Haru Tachas Amin is his name, and he will be at the Liberty Bank building for our Black Health and Wellness meetup. He'll be there that Saturday. And he'll be taking us through Qigong, and he'll be doing some meditation practice.
Oh, that's wonderful. This holistic healing, it's the way. This taking care of the mind and the body and the emotions. That was really a common thread as we spoke to interpersonal violence today. There was this thread of not being able to process emotions that are leading to violent behavior, this thread of witnessing other folks not being able to regulate their own emotions. So I think that this healing around our emotions and how we process our experiences is going to be extremely healing and important for our community. Okay, does anyone have any other resources they wanted me to add to the list? Okay, so with that then, we have our last question, which is, what is your self-care plan?
Well, I'll just tell you kind of part of my recovery practice, because I don't ever want to use drugs and alcohol again. And I've been clean for quite a long time. I've been clean for 29 years. I have 30 years in January. And it seems like just yesterday, but it seems like many years ago at the very same time. And I don't say that because I'm not trying to boast or anything, but I'm proud of, the time I put in. The main thing for me that keeps me balanced, because I feel like it's really about balance. I have to have some kind of spiritual practice. That's number one. So whatever that is, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, whatever spiritual practice that you're comfortable with, a God of my own understanding or a higher power, and some kind of commune with that. I also have a couple mentors, people that I am accountable to and that I look up to, because I don't know everything. And I need to be able to humble myself and go to people that I trust that will tell me the right information. And sometimes I'm wrong and I need to hear that. So having somebody I'm accountable to. Service. I need to always be doing some sort of service, whether that's, volunteering at the food bank, or it might just be calling somebody that I know is struggling or something along that line. But getting outside of my own head, by being of service to somebody else, I'm not ruminating and thinking about all the things that's going wrong with my life. And then I would say one other practice that I do a daily, morning meditation and that. And I also really try and make a gratitude list. There's always something in my day that I can be grateful for, even if it's just 1, 2, 3 little things, and realize that I'm very fortunate. And then the last thing I would say is at night, I'm not always great on the meditation, but I have a meditation app on my phone. And so I put on that meditation app when I get to bed, and I, make my phone black so I'm not having the, stimulation of the blue light or whatever. But just that last 15, 20 minutes before I drift off to sleep, that's my meditation time. And so that way I'm intentional about it, and I do get it in, and I do get some time to quiet my mind. But yeah, it's just a balance amongst those things. And of course, making sure your health is good. You got to go to the doctor, and get your teeth fixed and stuff like that, because I'm trying to stick around this camp. So that's my plan.
As self-care and stuff goes, my routine to just really try to stay on track, much like what you just said, it's meditation. Meditation is huge for me. I haven't gotten quite so much to writing out like a gratitude list, but that sounds wonderful. I do write out my scripts though for like I visualize specific like situations, I suppose, in my life where I feel like I'm reacting not in peace, right? Because peace is my nature. So those specific situations, I write them down and I visualize myself acting in peace when I meditate, right? That really helps me out a lot. And reading a lot, reading a lot of books, that helps really just calm down and not be so influenced by the influence of everything else. You really get to get into the world of like a writer, how long it takes to be able to write a book versus how long it takes to be able to read, right? That's really big for me. I really like reading books. Let's see, going out and like walks, like nature walks, hiking. I'd be taking hiking trips like alone. That really helps me reconnect. And then much like what you said, community service work, doing like volunteering or even organizing something of my own to be able to help serve the community. Because when you organize something, right, it helps you to stay on like a regular schedule of being of service comparatively to just always doing like different kinds of volunteer work. So it's good to do volunteer work and to help out and stuff. But when you organize something on top of volunteering, it really holds you accountable to continuously give back, right? On a schedule. Since the Mayan calendar, that's all we do is schedules. So
Say that. That's a good point. All right, fellas, do you want to talk about your self-care plan?
I got you, Curtis. So being from the South, I like to cook a lot. So that's part of my self-care plan. And just meditating, getting things off my mind. I don't take work home. So never did. So if people want to talk to me about something, you got to hit me. My office hours 9 to 5. If y'all watch the 5 Heartbeats, y'all know what I'm talking about. And that's pretty much it. Just meditation and cooking and breathing, learning to breathe.
Cool. I got a few things I'm gonna share here. First one is that meditation. I agree, and like Talisa was saying, Haru teaches a meditation. So there's a script, and you have where you envision in your mind the thing that causes you the stress or the issue, and then you have in your mind yourself dealing with that in a peaceful manner, and you do that on a daily. And what we're doing with that is pre-programming our mind, like I was talking about earlier, to be able to, when that situation arises, our automatic reaction to it is not the negative one that we used to have, but this new way of thinking that we respond to it with peace. So that's the first one. The second one is something that with my coaching I'm developing. It's called like a toolbox. Right, a self-healing toolbox. So things that make you happy and feel good, or release the endorphins in your brain, right? So it's movies you like to watch, music you like to listen to, food you like to eat, activities you like to partake in, people you like to be around, positive memories, things like this, so that when I'm in that mood or that mode, I can just go to this toolbox and pick one of these things out and help use it to help me get back into the mood that I need and want to be in. Another one is a powerful one, saying no. A lot of times we are unable to unapologetically say no, and we overextend ourselves, causing us to feel overwhelmed, anxious, whatever it may be, because we can't say no. Sometimes we have to be able to say no, and the person that we're saying no to has to be okay and understand that. And if they aren't, it might not be a person you need to have in your life. And then the last thing is something that I created for my coaching. It's very similar, married to the 12-step program, and it's the 12 principles that I use daily. I created a checklist, and this is something I can send to you. You can't see it because it's too close to the, but it's something I can send to you, Selena, to share with folks. But it's 12 things that I check off daily. Did I do these things? The first one is, did I give 100% at everything I set out to do that day? Am I giving 100%? The second one, was I 100% accountable for everything that I think, feel, say, or do? To make my word bond and keep it impeccable, so to be a person of my word, to pursue growth and personal development daily through whatever means that is, the podcast, reading books, associate with people, mentors, things of that nature. Intention for the day, set an intention every day and do not go to bed until that intention is met. Real lifers have a growth mindset oriented. We can sometimes get fixed, not realizing that we need to be optimistic and positive, and those bring about and attract things to be able to help us manifest the things we want in life. Realistically, be positive and optimistic. That's the next one. Be aware of who we are right now, but have ambitions to improve. Accept who we are. Don't try to fake it till we make it. Just be okay with that, but know that we're continually doing the work through that personal growth and development to become our best selves and be better. The next one is be conscious of our mental and physical diet, the things that we're eating, because that causes us to have certain, with the bacteria in our stomach, it causes certain mental things to happen, but also the mental things that we're putting in, the TV shows we're watching, the people we're hanging out with, the music we're listening to, things of that nature. Get the proper amount of rest and do some sort of physical activity daily. A lot of us think it's a badge of honor to walk around because we don't get much sleep and we're always working on the go. You'll be surprised how much this COVID thing wouldn't be an issue if we just drank water, got enough rest, did some sort of physical activity, and ate healthy and clean. Our immune system will be able to take care of itself and we'll be able to fight this COVID off, no problem. But then the physical activity is important too, because what's at rest stays at rest, what's in motion stays in motion. And you'd be surprised when you start releasing that blood from the physical activity, the thoughts that it creates and the positive attitude it creates. And then genuinely find ways to connect with others and do good for people, and then do good and go the extra mile. So when somebody wants you to do something, go the extra mile and do a little more and surprise them. So those are the 12 things. And I kind of check those off, and wherever there's gaps, that shows me those are areas that I need to work on.
Wow, definitely. Please do send me that checklist so I can share it with folks. That, like, look, if you are checking those boxes every day, you done had a good day. Like, let me just say that. I love it. Thank you for that resource. Well, that was the last question or comment from our community. So I would just like to, again, thank you all so much on behalf of Abundance of Hope Center for helping us be a part of this conversation. What we say, like our little tagline for Denormalizing Violence, is start conversation, heal community, shift culture, because we truly believe that these conversations do have the potential to shift culture down the line, because like you all said, how you're feeling and how you're thinking is how you're going to act, right? So we really got to get into the mindset of our communities and try to have these hard conversations and change some minds.
Say it one more time and shift. Start conversation.
Start conversation, heal community, shift culture. That's the whole point of denormalizing violence. Because
Love it.
conversation is very important. The way we communicate with each other, the way we've been taught to communicate with each other is intentional. So our unlearning and relearning can be just as intentional.
Yes, yes.
So are there any last thoughts from you all? I just want to give you all just one chance to say last thoughts, how you feel leaving this panel, how you're, walking back out into the community afterwards, and then we'll say goodnight.
First, I just wanted to say thank you, Selena, for creating this platform and offering this space for us not only to come on as panelists, but I learned so much tonight from the other panelists, and it was an honor to be on here with you all. But thank you so much for allowing us to be here and having us.
Thank you, Curtis.
Ashe, same thing, just ditto. Thank you for letting me be here. I'm honored, and thank you for putting it together. Selena, this is the second wonderful event I've been involved with you in Abundance of Hope, and I'm just really proud of you. And see how brilliant we are. We are some brilliant people. So we just need to get together and share the resources with each other. Ashe.
Yeah, we got it. It's right here in community.
I'm just gonna echo everything that they just said. Appreciate you, Selena, for having me. And being able to meet the great panelists that I got to meet today. And I'm definitely going to utilize your resources that you have put in the chat. So appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for allowing me. Sorry, I had my 4-year-old sister trying to distract me at the same time.
Understood. We know how.
I was gonna say that if y'all got kids, kiss your grandkids, and love on them.
Yes, love on the babies and the future generations. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for Denormalizing Violence Interpersonal. I will be sending you all the list of resources, the list of books, and the contact information for each other. I will also post that information into comments underneath the live video on Facebook, and then when I reshare it to our other social media accounts. So thank you so much for your input and for your perspective. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Well done.
Good night. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, well